Hello, how are you? What's happening? Your favorite trainer danger here. And we're going to talk a little bit about injury and injury prevention. Because, you know, you might be bored in quarantine, but you won't be injured. You get injured in a multitude of different ways. We're going to talk about the causes of injury, and we're going to talk about sort of the cycles of it, how somebody can kind of keep getting injured. Why do we get injured? Many reasons for injury, but one, you can just have an accident. You can step off the curb wrong and twist your ankle, that sort of thing. Second reason is very common, pattern overload. So repetitive movements. Maybe you have an occupation that requires you to do the same thing over and over again. Grabbing stuff. If you're a baseball pitcher, using the same motion, rotator cuff. You're a long distance runner, same motions, okay? You're getting the same impact over and over and over again, using the same muscle groups. The most common one that I see is occupational from people sitting too much. You can see it in posture. People's posture like this. Chest are tight, back is weak, causes a lot of issues such as pelvic tilt, whether hips, hamstrings, your hips are really tight, your butt's really weak, your hamstrings are really weak, your whole posterior chain is weak, and what happens is you do this. A lot of people think in terms of, wow, I hurt myself, I've got this injury here, and that's where the injury is coming from. For an example, the back. A lot of times when people have back issues, it's because of something like pelvic tilt, which we just talked about. Whereas the issue really isn't with the back itself. It's the fact that your back has to compensate for other muscles that aren't doing their jobs, or tightness. And usually the issue is soft tissue issue. It has nothing to do with your actual back. Of course, there are issues like disc compression and slip disc and herniated disc and these sort of things, but really what's happening most commonly are issues such as soft tissue issues where you have muscle imbalances, which we'll talk about, and you have knots and adhesions. And so if we address those issues, the pain and discomfort that you're typically suffering is rarely coming from that area. It's usually somewhere else in the body, and that just happens to be where it's manifesting itself to you. So these habits, like sitting all day at a computer and watching the screen, can cause things like pelvic tilt. This is what causes the issue because it changes your posture and causes postural stress. Muscle imbalances are just alterations in a muscle's length. Muscle length, layman's terms, it's either tight or it's weak. Okay, so when you have a muscle imbalance, basically what you're saying is one muscle, that's stabilizing things is overworked and tight, and therefore the other one is weak. So you have an imbalance there, and then somewhere else in your body has to accommodate that stress, so then you have discomfort and pain. So what causes the muscle imbalances? Postural stress, like we talked about. Emotional duress. There you go with stress again, the worst thing in the world. It can cause all kinds of issues, including muscle imbalances. Did you know that poor breathing can actually cause postural issues? A lot of people don't realize that. Your breathing, a lot of people breathe really high, causes postural issues, muscle imbalances. Repetitive movements we talked about over and over and over again can cause muscle imbalances. One muscle gets stronger than the other one. Poor training technique, your form's wrong. Usually won't have an effect on you right now, but down the road, years from now, especially if you continue to use the same poor posture and poor form when you're working out, it's going to cause issues over time. The reasons why trainers are always talking about form, it actually matters. Lack of core strength will do it. Lack of core strength will cause all kinds of issues. That's one of the first things you have to address on most people if they're first starting to train again is their core is weak. Cumulative trauma, so just trauma over time, over and over and over again throughout the years, eventually will break your body down. Lack of coordination. Okay, so your body doesn't communicate well with your brain. This is another thing you have to address with people when they're brand new at training again, or they've been deconditioned from years of being sedentary. You have to get them back into the groove, essentially, get their brains communicating again with their body. So all these things can cause injuries. And they can all lead to muscle imbalances, which then lead to injury. And then you have the cumulative injury cycle. So you have tissue trauma, which leads to inflammation. Your body needs to address that. Your body then is trying to compensate. It's stressed. Muscle spasm leads to adhesions, leads to altered neuromuscular control, which means you're moving differently. There's a muscle imbalance, and you start all over again. It can be a vicious cycle, so you have to break the pattern. So the first thing to break into pattern is you have to first identify where the problem is coming from. And like I said, it very rarely comes from the place you're experiencing the discomfort. It's coming from somewhere else. Once you establish where these issues are occurring, then you can do something about it. Now, how do you first figure that out? Well, you do, things like functional movement screenings. You do different assessments like an overhead squat assessment, for example. These sort of assessments will show you where these issues are occurring, postural issues just by looking at somebody or the way they walk, these sort of things. And then once you figure out what they are, then you have to address the muscle imbalance itself, which is stretching the muscle that's tight. And of course, the opposing muscle or muscle group that is weak, you have to strengthen that. It's not good enough just to stretch the muscle that's short. That's just temporary. You have to strengthen the muscle that's weak to make it permanent, if that makes sense. If I have an issue like pelvic tilt, I know that I have to strengthen my glutes, strengthen my core, and I also need to lengthen my hips, which are tight. Muscle imbalance leads to poor posture, which leads to poor movement, which then leads to injury. Let's talk about how we're going to fix it. It's a three-pronged approach. We have to stretch. We have to perform what's called myofascial release, which is getting the knots out of your muscles. And then what you have to do, if you have to strengthen the muscle through resistance training, you have to strengthen the muscles that are weak. What are you going to use for myofascial release? Sounds kinky, doesn't it? How about this? It's got all shapes and sizes. Okay. You can use anything. All you're really doing is giving yourself a deep tissue massage is essentially what you're doing. So all those knots that you've accumulated, you notice that the children don't have this because they're not sitting in chairs. Well, some of them nowadays are. But they're not sitting in chairs looking at computers. As little kids, they're crawling around on the floor, right? We're meant as adult human beings to be walking upright, moving around. We're not meant to be sitting in chairs. It's the worst thing you can do. We're supposed to be moving through different planes of motion. Not stagnant, not stationary. Once we find the knots, we have several tools to help us. So we have the foam roller. You can buy these for $5 at Five Below. They make longer ones, short ones, whatever, different sizes, shapes, things. And you're just going to, now I can do a whole other video on foam rolling, but you're going to use this, okay? You're going to self-massage essentially, using your own body weight against it and laying on it for at least 30 seconds until that muscle releases and it gets rid of that knot. But you can also use for the hard to get spots and just different areas of your body. Lacrosse ball, softball, baseball. You can lay on the ground and use it. You can put it against the wall, against your back. All sorts of different uses for it. But the point is any well-rounded workout program involves foam rolling. Have to do it. Flexibility. So to make things more complicated, there's several different progressions of flexibility. You got static stretching. You have AIS, which is active isolated stretching. And then, of course, you have dynamic stretching. You don't need to know what that necessarily is. Just know that if you're training with a trainer like myself, that is what you're going to be progressing towards. And all of that is to promote mobility and prevent injury, which is what this is all about. And of course, you have to strengthen the muscles that are weak. That's the third part of the approach, which is just as important. So the muscle that's weak, you have to strengthen, or you're going to be less tight. And also, hopefully, holy shit, I've never seen that before. Ideally, all these things are going to promote a more active lifestyle, which means you're going to get up from the chair and move quite a bit more. And you're naturally going to get stronger in the areas and balance yourself out and less chance of injury. Don't forget the warm-up. That's a big thing. So that's another thing that people make a mistake about. They want to rush right into the workout. And, especially if you're low on time, 5 to 10 minute warm-up. Get the blood flowing. Your muscles are like rubber band. If they're cold and you try to stretch them, snap. If they're nice and warm, they're very pliable. Cool down is also important as well. It's a very end of your workout, but for our purposes, warm up 5-10 minutes. That's going to help prevent a lot of injuries. Anyway, I hope that helped. So, La Dolce Vita Fitness, as you know, La Dolce Vita is the sweet life. It's not just about, it's about living life as art. It's about choosing your own adventure, and it's about all the things that make life worth living. Having fun, having a good time, living your own adventure, travel, great wine, great drink, dancing, naked preferably. Whatever that lifestyle is for you, whatever living that life is what it's about. But it also includes working out, holistic approach, eating well, because you can't live your adventure if you're not mobile or you're not moving well, or if you're tight, or if you're hurting, or if you don't have the energy, or any of those things. So the whole point is that whatever your adventure happens to be, we cater the workouts to your lifestyle. So if you want to take a trip to Peru and do hiking, then we cater it to you. If you want to rock that bikini on the beach this year, then obviously your workout's going to be a little bit different now, isn't it? And your whole mobility plan is going to be different. Your entire program will be different. So everything is customized to you, what you need, to your limitations, to whatever health, whatever condition you're in right now, and then gradually progressed over time. That's the idea. So what you're doing 3 months from now, 6 months from now, 12 months from now is not what you're doing right now, nor should it be. Anyway, if you guys have any questions, contact me, direct message me, text me if you know me well enough, and we'll get to work. Talk to you soon. Oh, and by the way, we can do everything online, so you don't have to be near me. I know you're in quarantine. Hit me up. We'll do it online.